Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars and welcome to another of my classic film reviews. And today's classic film review is for the 1989 action crime thriller An Innocent Man, a film that is directed by Peter Yates and it stars Tom Selleck, F. Murray Abraham, Layla Robbins, David Rashi, Richard Young and Todd Graff. Now, this is a film that follows Tom Selleck's character, Jimmy Rainwood, who is married to Kate. They are living an idyllic life. They've both got good jobs. They want to start a family, and then one night his world is turned upside down when two corrupt cops break into his house thinking they're going to a drugs bust, but they've actually gone to the wrong address. They end up shooting Tom Selleck, realise they've made a mistake, and then frame him and set him up, and he ends up getting basically sent to prison for 6 years, and he essentially is an innocent man. While in prison, he finds it brutal and relentless, and he has to do things that he wouldn't choose to do on the outside to survive, and inside in the jail he befriends a veteran in the jail played by F. Murray Abraham, a guy called Virgil Kane, who takes Tom Selleck under his wing and teaches him how to survive in prison. However, upon his release from prison, he realises he's not going to get any peace from these two corrupt police officers, and he decides to take the law into his own hands. Now, so that's the basic premise of the film here, An Innocent Man. Now, this is a film that I used to watch an awful lot. I used to have it on VHS when I was younger. I will have had it on DVD at some point as well. I don't believe it's out on Blu-ray. I have looked and I don't think I've been able to find it on Blu-ray, but it is a film that I would definitely have in my collection. I've always been a fan of Tom Selleck. He's got great screen presence. I think he's made some good films over the years, but I think his movie career probably wasn't to be. He wasn't that top tier leading man actor that I think he could have been. Many people know that he was originally cast as Indiana Jones, and he had to pass on that part due to his commitments to the TV show Magnum PI. However, I digress a little bit. What I'm basically saying is I think Tom Selleck's a fine actor, and I think this is one of his finest films in his back catalogue. I think he plays his character of Jimmy Rainwood expertly. This guy who, you see at the beginning when he's being framed by these two corrupt cops, the real fear on his face when he realises that he could go to prison for up to 12 years, but he refuses to plead guilty to something he didn't do in regards to making a deal with the DA, which is why he gets sent to prison for 6 years. He could essentially have been only gone for 6 months in a minimum security prison, but he wouldn't back down. And that look on his face in the courtroom when the judge passes the sentence is a real moment, a real great acting moment from Tom Selleck. You could just see this real despair almost in his face, and disbelief of what has just happened, and then how completely alone he feels when he first goes to prison and the troubles that he goes through. I think it's an underrated performance, I think, by Tom Selleck, and it's one of those films that didn't do well at the cinema. I don't actually think it was ever released in the UK in the cinema. I could be wrong, but I don't remember it being released in the UK. I only ever remember watching it on VHS, and when I've looked into it in regards to the box office, I could only find the domestic box office total, which was low, something like 20 million, something like that. So it may basically found its home on VHS and DVD, etc. This film, it's one of those films that found its audience after it was released in the cinema. Now, after looking into it, interestingly, there were a lot of names attached to this film to play Tom Selleck's part, and some of the names attached were things like Gene Hackman, James Caan, Tom Berenger, Kurt Russell, Michael Douglas and Nick Nolte, and there are a couple of names in there that I think would have been interesting in this role, and that's not to take anything away from Tom Selleck, because I do think he actually is very, very good in this film. And this film is structured very well and paced very well too. you've got the first quarter of the film where it shows him in his normal life, and then when he has to go through the court proceedings before he gets sent to prison. And then the big chunk of the film is when he's in prison and how he has to cope with that new change in his lifestyle and who he becomes while he's in prison. And then you've got the new Jimmy Rainwood when he's released from prison. He wants to get his life back on track, but he realises he's not going to get the opportunity because these two corrupt cops are not going to leave him alone. So he has to take matters into his own hands. So you get that section of the film as well. So it's like it's split up really nicely into these three sections, and I think they all work well, and they're all paced really nicely as well. It's a really nicely paced film. Prison films sometimes the pacing can hurt them. A lot of prison films that I watch or have watched, the pacing can hurt them. I don't think it does here. It doesn't dwell too long in the prison. Long enough, but not too long, if you like. So it's a good film. It's one of those films that will get that as probably many people have missed over the years or have not really noticed. It's never really done good business anyway. It's not a film that an awful lot of people talk about, but it's definitely a film that you need to be checking out if you've never seen An Innocent Man. It's a great film, especially if you like prison films. I think it's certainly one of the better ones. It is very violent, there's lots of language and swearing in it. It's not toned down really at all, this film. It doesn't hold back. It's not the Tom Selleck you might know and recognise from things like Magnum PI. It is a very, very violent film, and it is quite gritty, grounded and realistic. Certainly the prison scenes gets a little bit far-fetched by the end, but it still does give you a satisfying ending. So I'm going to give it a very strong 8.5 out of 10. It is a really good film. It's a good Tom Selleck film, and it is certainly a film you need to check out if you haven't. So that is my classic film review for An Innocent Man. I hope you liked the review. If you did, please click the like button. It really does help the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and of course I will be back with more content on Screen Stars very, very soon.